He wasn't supposed to be there. A retired Navy SEAL named Marcus Cole, a man who'd vanished into the frozen silence of Montana, living with nothing but his loyal German shepherd, Ranger, and the ghosts of his past. When the storm hit, most people ran for cover. Marcus didn't. He turned the lights back on inside an abandoned mountain lodge, a promise whispered long ago. Keep the light burning, son. By nightfall, 12 strangers appeared at his door. Frozen, starving, terrified. He let them in even though he knew he might not survive the night. But what Marcus didn't know was that one of those strangers carried the truth he'd spent years running from. And before the snow cleared, that truth would come knocking, bringing a redemption he never thought he deserved. Before we begin, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments. And if you believe some lights should never go out, tap subscribe and join us, because this story might just melt the coldest winter in your heart. The wind carved through the Montana mountains like a blade, carrying snow that glittered faintly under the dying light. The temperature had dropped to -20, and the world was nothing but white and silence. Inside that silence moved Marcus Cole, a 36-year-old retired Navy SEAL whose body still carried the discipline of war, but whose eyes no longer held its fire. His dark skin was lined with exhaustion, and a faint scar crossed his left brow, a reminder of the explosion that had ended his career and claimed his team. He had been living alone for 3 winters now, working as a mountain ranger by contract, pretending that solitude was peace when it was really penance. Walking beside him was Ranger, a 4-year-old German shepherd with a sable coat dusted in frost, lean and muscular, trained to detect landmines, now retrained to track lost hikers. The dog's amber eyes were alert but soft whenever they met Marcus's, as if the animal understood the weight his master carried. The truck's radio crackled. Blizzard red level. All residents stay indoors. Marcus switched it off. He didn't need warnings. He could read the sky. He parked near the collapsed sign that once said North Star Outpost, a mountain lodge long abandoned but still wired to a backup generator. He used to train there before it was decommissioned. Now he checked it once a month, one more duty to keep him busy enough not to think. As he stepped into the wind, Ranger stopped suddenly, nose twitching toward the ridge. A faint light blinked against the snow, a red pulse, weak and irregular. An SOS beacon. Marcus squinted through the storm, tension rising in his chest. He'd seen that rhythm before. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. The universal call for help. His gloved fingers tightened around the rope coil at his belt. "Easy, boy," he muttered, but Ranger's ears was flattened, and a low growl rumbled deep in his throat. They moved toward the light, each step sinking knee-deep into the snow. The slope was treacherous. Beneath the ice was a sheer drop to the ravine. Marcus tied the rope around a pine trunk, clipped the carabiner to his harness, and began to descend. Ranger waited above, barking once, short and sharp, their signal for "I've got your 6." Halfway down, Marcus's flashlight caught a patch of crimson on the ice. At first, he thought it was fabric. Then it moved, a hand, pale and shaking. "Hold on!" he shouted, voice whipped away by the wind. He reached the figure, a woman, unconscious, half buried in snow. Her hair was light brown, tangled with ice, her face freckled, lashes clumped from frost. Her name tag still clung to her parka. Grace Miller, age mid-30s. Her pulse fluttered weakly under his glove. She looked like someone who'd been fighting for hours, someone who refused to give up. Marcus wrapped her in his emergency blanket. his breath fogging thick in the air. As he lifted her, her head fell against his shoulder, and for a moment, he felt something unfamiliar, a rush of responsibility, maybe even fear of losing another life. He carried her up the slope, muscles burning, and when they reached the top, Ranger circled anxiously, whining low. Then the dog froze, gaze fixed beyond Marcus's shoulder. The hair on his neck bristled. Marcus turned, shining the light across the ridge. For a split second, through the blizzard's curtain, he saw a man standing still among the pines, wearing a tattered military jacket, face obscured by the storm. The posture, rigid, straight, unmistakable, was that of a soldier. But when Marcus blinked, the figure was gone, leaving only snow and shadow. His heart pounded. It can't be! He carried Grace toward the truck, Ranger walking close, still growling under his breath. Marcus laid her across the back seat, turned on the heater, and checked her vitals again. Her lips were blue but moving faintly, whispering words he couldn't yet catch. He leaned closer. Her eyelids fluttered open, pupils dilated but focused right on him. And then, through trembling lips, she breathed the words that froze him colder than the storm outside. You're the one they told me about. The only one who survived. The wind howled outside, shaking the truck, as Marcus stared at her, feeling the past he had buried beneath years of silence stirring once more. The storm had swallowed the mountain whole. Snow whirled like ash, burying the road and all signs of civilization beneath a white, endless drift. Marcus Cole, his face half hidden behind a frost-bitten scarf, pushed through the door of North Star Outpost, carrying Grace Miller in his arms. The old military station groaned under the weight of the blizzard, its wooden beams creaking as if remembering its former life. Inside, 12 strangers huddled around a dying fire. They looked up as the door slammed open, eyes wide, faces gaunt with cold and fear. Marcus laid Grace on a cot near the stove. She's hypothermic, he said quietly. His voice carried authority born of command, even though his uniform had long been replaced by a worn green parka. A tall man near the fire stepped forward. His name was Dave Henson, a truck driver in his late 40s, thick-shouldered with a grizzled beard and calloused hands, the kind of man who'd seen too much road and too little rest. "We're packed already," Dave muttered. "Ain't got room for more mouths." Before Marcus could respond, a woman spoke from the shadows. Harper Ellison, around 35, lean with sharp features and dark hair pulled tight under a wool cap. Her eyes, gray and steady, narrowed as they landed on Marcus. "He's not just anyone," she said softly, her tone strange, almost knowing. "You're Marcus Cole, Navy SEAL. You were declared dead 5 years ago." Marcus froze, surprise flickering behind his calm expression. "You've got the wrong man," he replied evenly, but something in Harper's half-smile said she wasn't convinced. Around them, the other strangers murmured, ordinary people caught in extraordinary fear. There was Ruth Carter, a frail widow in her 60s with trembling hands clutching a rosary. Liam and Ava Brooks, a young couple, newly married, still clinging to hope. Tommy, a college kid with an oversized jacket and nerves he couldn't hide. And Elena, a nurse with soft brown skin and tired eyes, quietly tending to frostbite wounds. All of them looked to Marcus now, as if his quiet strength might mean survival. Marcus checked the supplies. Canned beans, rice, 2 gallons of water. Enough for maybe 3 days if rationed. "We share evenly," he said. Dave slammed his palm on the table. You share, we starve. I drove freight through 3 states to get home to my boy. I ain't dying here 'cause you want to play hero." Marcus turned slowly, meeting Dave's glare. His voice was calm but cold. "If we share, we live. If we fight, we die faster. Your choice." Silence followed, thick and uneasy, but no one challenged him again. Ranger, the German shepherd, padded through the corridor, his coat glistening under the dim light. He sniffed every corner, then stopped at a door sealed with rusted bolts, a steel door marked restricted access. The dog's ears pricked. He growled low, tail rigid. Marcus glanced over, his chest tightening. That was the old storage bunker, a place he'd been ordered never to open again after the accident. The mission that had killed his team. He forced himself to look away. "Leave it, boy," he muttered. Ranger didn't move. He just stood there, staring at the door like it was breathing. Night deepened. The storm outside screamed against the windows. Inside, the fire flickered weakly. Marcus dozed in a chair, his rifle leaning beside him. Then Ranger barked, once, sharp and urgent. Marcus bolted up. Grace's cot was empty. Only the blanket remained, still warm. "Where is she?" Harper asked, her tone slicing through the panic. Marcus grabbed his flashlight, following Ranger down the narrow hallway. The beam of light caught something on the floor, small footprints leading toward the sealed room. Snow had blown in through a cracked window, covering the floor with a thin frost. Marcus crouched, brushed the ice aside, and froze. Beneath it was a symbol carved into the concrete, an insignia he knew too well. The seal trident, scratched deep into the stone beside a message scrawled in shaky handwriting. "We never left." Before Marcus could process it, the steel door shuddered. A low metallic sound echoed, like something or someone moving inside. Ranger's growl deepened into a snarl. Marcus raised his flashlight, the beam trembling slightly in his grip. And then, from the other side of the door, a man's voice rasped through the darkness, rough and broken, yet unmistakably human. "Cole, you lit the light again. Now they know where to find you." The flashlight flickered, and Marcus's pulse spiked. Somewhere deep in the storm, something old and unfinished had just woken up. The temperature had fallen so low that even the air seemed to groan under its own weight. Snow swept across the windows of North Star Outpost like claws, scraping the glass in rhythmic bursts. The first storm had been merciless, but this one, Marcus Cole knew, was worse. The generator had died an hour ago, its final sputter ending with the smell of burning oil. The lodge now stood at the mercy of the wind, and the thermometer read 40 degrees Celsius. Marcus stood before the fireplace, its glow weak and trembling, his breath misting in the frigid air. His hands, scarred and calloused, shook slightless as he fed the last log into the flames. "Everyone to the main hall," he ordered. His voice carried a soldier's weight, steady but threaded with exhaustion. Around him, the survivors gathered, wrapped in blankets and fear. Dave Henson, the trucker, now had frost whitening his beard, his jaw clenched in silent defiance against panic. Ruth Carter, the elderly widow, huddled close to Elena, the nurse, who rubbed her hands to restore circulation. Liam and Ava Brooks sat together, the young husband whispering reassurances that neither believed. Tommy, the college kid, was shivering so hard his teeth clicked, clutching a mug of cold coffee like it could save him. Ranger, the German shepherd, moved among them, his sable coat bristling, every muscle alert. He was 5 years old now, strong but scarred, A jagged mark on his flank told of shrapnel from a past life in the military. He had been trained to detect explosives, to find men buried under rubble. Now, his purpose was different, but the instincts remained. As the wind howled outside, Ranger's ears twitched. He began pacing, nose low, growling softly as if sensing something unseen pressing against the walls. Harper Ellison sat near the far end of the hall, her gray eyes fixed on Marcus. The firelight revealed the fine lines at the corners of her mouth, signs not of age but of years spent holding in secrets. Finally, she stood. "Enough lies," she said. Her voice was calm but sharp enough to cut through the storm's roar. "My name is Harper Ellison. I'm the director of the Waylight Foundation. We were surveying this site because 5 years ago, North Star was the location of a covert SEAL operation that went wrong. Everyone was declared missing, except one man. Marcus Cole." The room froze. Even the fire seemed to shrink. Marcus didn't deny it. His eyes, usually guarded, flickered with something raw, pain, maybe guilt. He stared at the floor, then at Ranger, as if the dog's steady presence could anchor him. "That's over," he said quietly. Harper shook her head. "No, Marcus, it's not. Grace, she's not just a civilian either. She was the team's medic. She was there the night your squad vanished." Marcus's throat tightened. Grace's pale face flashed through his mind, the frost on her eyelashes, the whisper she'd given him in the truck. "You're the one who survived." Before he could respond, the silence broke with a sharp crackle. The radio, the same dead unit that hadn't worked since the generator failed, hissed to life. A voice emerged through static, deep, raspy, unmistakably male. "You promised you'd come back for us, Marcus." The words crawled through the speakers like ghosts. "The storm never let go, and neither will we." Ranger lunged toward the sound, barking violently, his hackles standing like iron. Marcus turned pale, gripping the table for balance. Dave swore under his breath. "Who the hell was that?" Marcus didn't answer. He couldn't. His mind was already racing back to the mission, Operation North Star, a Black Ops extraction gone wrong, 6 men trapped in an avalanche. He'd been ordered to retreat, to call for air support. He had. But when rescue arrived 2 days later, nothing remained but the storm. Then, without warning, a thunderous bang split the air. The back wall behind the fireplace cracked open, bricks tumbling forward, revealing a hidden compartment sealed behind steel plating. Dust and frost poured out as the survivors stumbled back. Inside the hollow was a military safe, corroded with age, its door stamped with the SEAL insignia. Marcus approached slowly. His breath shook. "This wasn't supposed to be here," he muttered. His fingers traced the emblem, an eagle clutching a trident. And for a moment he looked like the man he used to be, strong but haunted. He spun the dial, entered a code he hadn't spoken aloud in years, and the latch clicked. Inside, neatly stacked, were old files, rusted dog tags, and a single cassette tape marked North Star Final Log. Marcus slid it into the portable recorder found beside it. A familiar voice filled the room, calm, resolute, but wrapped in static. "If anyone hears this, keep the light burning. We're not gone. We're waiting." It was the voice of Captain Elias Ward, Marcus's old team leader, the man who had died under that same mountain. Marcus's grip tightened until his knuckles turned white. His jaw trembled, not from the cold, but from the memories clawing their way back. Then Ranger growled again, low and deep. The survivors turned toward the window. The storm outside had shifted, no longer shapeless, but moving, rhythmically. Through the swirling snow, Marcus saw them, dark figures, dozens of them, trudging in perfect formation toward the lodge. Each shape shimmered faintly, catching the light like metal. And on their chests, glowing faintly through the blizzard, were seal insignias, reflecting the firelight. "They're coming," Harper whispered. And Marcus, staring into the storm that had stolen his past, finally understood. Some promises, even in death, refused to be broken. The storm had passed, leaving behind a silence so heavy it felt sacred. The world outside North Star Outpost was buried under a fresh blanket of white, thick, untouched, unbroken. The wind had stopped screaming. The mountains had gone still. Marcus Cole stepped through the warped wooden doors, his boots crunching in the snow that reached his calves. His breath formed clouds that vanished almost instantly in the bitter air. Ranger, his 5-year-old German shepherd with a sable coat streaked in gray, padded beside him, tail low, ears perked, nostrils twitching for movement. Marcus scanned the perimeter, every muscle tensed for something. Footprints, debris, any sign of the dark figures they'd seen the night before. But the snow was flawless. No prints, no tracks, nothing. It was as though the storm had swallowed them whole. Inside, the survivors huddled near the dying embers of the fireplace. Harper Ellison, the director of the Waylight Foundation, sat at the table, her black hair messy from sleepless nights, her gray eyes sharp behind exhaustion. There was something in the way she carried herself, steady, unshaken, like someone used to command, someone who'd buried too many regrets to fear the living or the dead. When Marcus returned, shaking the frost from his coat, Harper looked up. "Anything?" she asked quietly. He shook his head. "No tracks, no bodies. It's like they were never there." She motioned to the small tape recorder sitting on the table, the one they'd found behind the wall. "Then maybe the answers are here." Marcus hesitated before sitting down. His gloved fingers trembled slightly as he pressed play. The tape hissed, and then came the voice of Captain Elias Ward, steady and calm even through the static. "Operation North Star, final log. Objective: rescue of 3 civilian families trapped near Sector 9. Command has ordered retreat. We have wounded. Supplies low. Lieutenant Cole insists we stay." Marcus closed his eyes as the memories surged back like a flood of ice water. He could see it again, the avalanche roaring down the ridge, the radio going silent, the screams cut off by snow. He had disobeyed a direct order to withdraw. He'd stayed behind to save a family, a mother, a father, 2 children, and in doing so, he'd doomed his entire team. They were buried under tons of snow while he, the lone survivor, had been dragged out by search and rescue 2 days later. Ever since, the guilt had chained itself to his soul, whispering that survival was not a gift, but a punishment. The recording continued. "If anyone finds this, keep the light burning. Not for us, for them. The lost, the cold, the ones who never made it home." Marcus's jaw tightened. His reflection flickered in the dying firelight, eyes hollow, dark skin drawn tight over sharp cheekbones, a man shaped by loss and too proud to ask for forgiveness. Harper's voice broke through the silence, soft but firm. "That family you saved, they survived, didn't they?" Marcus nodded faintly. They did, but 12 others didn't. He looked at her then, eyes heavy with years of unspoken confession. I've been trying to make it right ever since. Every storm, every lost soul I pull from the snow, it's never enough. Harper leaned closer, her expression neither pitying nor cold, just human. You've been living like this storm was your punishment, she said. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's your second chance. You didn't just keep the light burning, Marcus. You brought 12 strangers back from the dark. That's not penance. That's redemption. Before he could answer, Ranger's head snapped toward the window, ears rigid. Outside, faint lights flickered through the snow, red and blue strobes cutting across the white. Then, the distant thump of helicopter blades. The rescue teams had arrived. The tension that had clung to Marcus's chest for days finally loosened, just a little. He turned toward the others, Dave, Ruth, Liam, Ava, Elena, all of them weary but alive. They found us, Elena whispered, tears freezing on her cheeks. Minutes later, the rescuers burst through the door, bundled in orange parkas, faces hidden behind frost masks. They moved quickly, efficient, practiced. Stretchers were laid out, blankets distributed. Grace Miller, the woman Marcus had rescued in the first storm, was conscious now but weak. Her light brown hair clung to her face, and her lips were pale, but her eyes, the same eyes that once looked through him with recognition, were warm again. As they lifted her onto the stretcher, she reached for Marcus's hand. Her grip was faint but certain. "The light you kept," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the helicopter blades. "It brought them home. They forgive you." Marcus's throat closed. He tried to speak, but no words came. He simply nodded, letting her hand fall as the paramedics carried her toward the waiting chopper. Snow flurried around them like ashes, catching the last rays of the setting sun. One by one, the survivors were led out until only Marcus and Harper remained. The last helicopter rose into the sky, its lights fading into the mist. Marcus stood in the doorway, the cold biting his skin, and looked back at the outpost. The windows glowed faintly from the fire they'd left behind. And then, through the swirling snow, he saw him. Captain Elias Ward, his old commander, standing on the upper balcony of North Star Outpost, his uniform torn, his face calm and proud. The man raised one hand in a silent salute. Marcus blinked, and the figure dissolved into the wind, leaving nothing but white. For the first time in 5 years, Marcus didn't feel the storm pressing on his chest. Instead, he felt peace, the kind earned, not given. Ranger pressed against his leg, and Marcus smiled faintly. "Come on, boy," he said, voice soft. "Let's go home." Morning light spilled gently over the Montana mountains, turning the snow into sheets of gold. It had been a month since the storm, and North Star Outpost no longer looked like a ruin swallowed by ice. It had been reborn. The old timber walls had been repaired, the roof reinforced, and a new sign hung proudly above the entrance. The same words Marcus's father once carved by hand. "If you're cold, you're home." The building now bore a new name, North Star K-9 Rescue and Training Center. Marcus Cole stood before it in a dark ranger's jacket lined with wool, his broad frame softened by a rare sense of peace. His once wild eyes, dark and intense, now carried warmth, something he hadn't felt in years. The scar above his left brow was still there, but it seemed less like a wound and more like a mark of survival. Ranger sat beside him, the loyal German shepherd now a local legend. At 6 years old, he was large and powerful, with a sable coat dusted in silver and eyes as alert as ever. Around his neck hung a small brass tag engraved with the words, "The Eyes That Never Sleep." He had become the program's symbol, a living reminder of the bond between man and dog, of loyalty that never fades even when the world turns white and silent. As volunteers and trainees gathered, Marcus gave a nod of approval to the workers raising the final support beam. Each face among them told a story of survival, redemption, or newfound purpose. Harper Ellison approached from across the courtyard, dressed in a gray winter coat that fit her tall, graceful form. Her dark hair caught the sun, revealing faint streaks of silver, and her calm, steady demeanor carried both authority and empathy. She was no longer the guarded investigator he first met in the storm, but a partner in rebuilding something greater. Her foundation, Waylight, had financed the transformation of North Star into a center for search and rescue training, honoring both fallen soldiers and lost civilians. "Not bad for a man who once swore he was done with people," she teased lightly. Marcus smiled, a rare expression that made him look younger, almost boyish. "Turns out people grow on you," he replied. The inauguration was simple but heartfelt. Survivors of the storm, Dave, Ruth, Liam, Ava, Elena, Tommy, stood among new recruits. They laughed, shared food, and told stories by the fire that now burned in the rebuilt hall. The warmth inside was more than physical. It was the kind of warmth that only exists among those who have been to the edge of despair and found their way back together. During the ceremony, Harper handed Marcus a small wooden box, worn but carefully restored. Inside lay a cassette tape, the one they had found behind the wall, now digitally cleaned and preserved. "I thought you'd want to hear it properly," she said softly. Marcus took a breath, inserted the tape into the old recorder, and pressed play. The familiar voice of Captain Elias Ward filled the room, smooth yet carrying the weight of command. "If this message reaches anyone, know that we didn't die in vain. The light was never about walls or shelter. It was about people. If the light still burns, it means we're still here. In you. In the ones you save." The room went silent. Marcus stood motionless, every word cutting through him like wind over ice. When the tape ended, Harper placed her hand on his arm. "He'd be proud of you," she whispered. Marcus looked around, at the survivors, at Ranger lying by the hearth, at the new recruits studying the rescue dogs, and realized she was right. Outside, dusk settled over the valley, painting the snow in shades of violet. From afar came the low hum of a car engine. A mother and her young daughter, bundled in scarves, had stopped on the icy road, their headlights catching the glow of North Star's beacon in the distance. The little girl pressed her mittened hands to the window. "Mom, look, it's a light." The mother smiled faintly, her tired face softening. "Yes, sweetheart. That means we're not lost." Back inside, Marcus watched the glow of the lamp above the door, its golden hue cutting through the rising mist. He thought of his father, of his fallen brothers, and of all those who had been lost to the storm. "Dad," he murmured under his breath, "I kept it burning, and I'm not alone anymore." Harper stood beside him, her voice steady and sure. "Your light's become a beacon, Marcus. Not just for this mountain, for everyone who still believes kindness can outlast the cold." He smiled at that, quietly, as snow began to fall again. Gentle this time, harmless, like a benediction. The camera pulled back, framing the North Star outpost glowing like a lantern against the vast whiteness. On the roof, the newly restored lamp burned strong, its reflection shimmering across the snowfields below. And then, over the final shot, the words appeared against the night sky. Some lights are not meant to guide the lost, but to remind the living that even in the storm, humanity still burns. Some say storms come to break us, but sometimes they come to remake us. When the winds fade and the snow settles, all that's left is what we chose to keep alive. The love we gave, the kindness we shared, and the faith that kept the flame burning when the night was darkest. Marcus's light wasn't just a lantern in the mountains. It was a promise that even in silence, God still works his miracles through human hands. He doesn't always part the storm. Sometimes, he sends someone to walk with us through it. So if you're watching this tonight, maybe that light is calling you too. Maybe it's a reminder to forgive someone, to help a stranger, to keep your faith when everything around you feels cold. Because miracles don't always look like thunder or fire. They look like a man who doesn't give up, a woman who believes again, or a simple act of mercy that changes everything. Before you go, share this story with someone who needs hope tonight. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. And if you believe that miracles still happen, type Amen in the comments below. May God bless you and your loved ones, and may your light, no matter how small, keep burning for someone lost in their own storm. Subscribe for more stories of faith, compassion, and the quiet miracles that prove His grace still walks among us.